Hello and welcome. Today I'm adding Ploid from the Indie Heroes Collection 1 to my ever-growing list where I rank every Evercade game ever. Ploid is an aftermarket game for the NES, originally released in 2021 by Nape Games. It is a vaguely Mega Man inspired platformer developed in NES Maker, I believe, and the story focuses on the Ploids. There's something about an Alpha and Omega Ploid and sacred disc files, and I didn't really care. Anyway, I'm going to get straight into the
graphics.
Presentation wise, the game doesn't look too bad. You've got these little cutscenes and it tells the story. Like I said, although I couldn't be bothered with the story and just skip through them, they look nice. The main graphics aren't too bad, simple and cartoonish. They're fairly typical NES stuff, although they certainly don't push the hardware any, which makes it a bit bewildering when there's slowdown and there's almost nothing on screen. One enemy and 2 minutes on screen? Oh no, we better slow things down, that's too much for the system to handle. Which is to say, I think it's poorly optimised. On the plus side, you do get to see an Evercade handheld, the original Evercade, in the graphics of the game. But on that, yeah, it's reasonable graphically, but nothing special.
Sound and music.
The sound is nothing special, and in some ways there's not really enough in the way of sound effects, to be perfectly honest. There's not enough audio feedback to things. But again, being a little bit sparse on sound isn't a deal breaker, but maybe there could be more. The music isn't too bad actually, it's probably the strong point of the game. I wouldn't call it amazing, but it's perfectly good chiptune stuff. It's catchy and upbeat, and it sounds authentically like an NES soundtrack, but then it should because it's developed for original NES hardware. Anyway, yeah, the sound or the music is pretty good.
Gameplay.
On the surface, it's fairly Mega Man-like stuff. A flick screen platformer where you go around, jump around, climb and shoot things. And there's the occasional boss. But that's where the good things end. The jumping and movement doesn't really feel that responsive or particularly good. The jumps have a weird weight to them and generally feel sluggish. The ladder control feels a bit slippery. The shooting isn't the most responsive, and there's not really enough in the way of feedback when you're hitting enemies. And the enemies are very basic in their behaviours and quite erratic. There are enemies that shoot and there's no real timing to it. It feels randomised, which is never the best thing when you're trying to plan your moves. The game is relatively short and not overly challenging, except for the challenge of wanting to persevere with it. Honestly, I find it a hard game to play and to want to progress any further, hence why all this footage is from the first level. The platforming is neither engaging, challenging or enjoyable. The enemies aren't engaging or exciting enough to feel like a challenge to beat. The bosses are pretty poorly implemented.
Overall opinion.
As a game, Ploid has all the key ingredients. It's got graphics, it's got sound, you have enemies, everything is there, but the implementation is so lacking. The game is never fun to play. The platforming is very basic and unengaging. The combats, well, it's just lame, let's put it that way. Like I said, it's got the key ingredients, it's just put together in such a way that although it looks like a game, it moves like a game, it sounds like a game, but it lacks anything that makes it a fun game to play. So yeah, this one really only has curiosity value. But if you play it, I would say, ask yourself, are you really that curious? Oh, sorry, that feels really harsh. I don't know anything about Nape Games. It does seem earnestly made. It just needed more time in the oven when it came to the level design and the gameplay itself. As someone who has dabbled in game dev, I know it's not easy, and making a game that was more than just functional and was engaging and exciting to play is where I started to struggle. So I appreciate the difficulties they have, but that doesn't change the fact that this commercially released product isn't really up to snuff. Fortunately, it's just one of many on the collection, and most of the games are much better than this, so yeah, it's not all bad.
Ranking.
So, placing Ploid on my ever-growing list where I rank every Evercade game ever, I've elected to put it above Laser Zone A, but below Andy's Attack, placing it at 392 out of 398 games that I've ranked so far. Anyway, I think that's enough Ploid bashing. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.